Welcome, Deb, to the Healing Trauma podcast again. It's been a little bit of a while, and I am just so pumped up for this and excited to have you. Welcome.
Thank you. It's fun to be here. Your excitement is contagious. So here we go.
Mm. And there's a reason why I get excited. I think that the polyvagal theory and its impact is probably what I talk about most when I talk about trauma. And I have a podcast all about trauma, but this is always the first thing I go to. It's the first thing I explain to people, whether it's individuals, anybody, because it's like the foundation. And I was writing something this morning on Instagram and I was saying about the impact that it had. And I said, before that, I was just struggling for decades with cognitive explanations that therapists were giving me, and it wasn't doing anything. And finally, I got to the point where I recognized that, hey, this is cognitive stuff, cognitive explanations they're giving me. But some of my symptoms, most of my symptoms, are happening when I'm not even thinking. It really made me question. And then came the polyvagal theory understanding. And it seemed to really answer so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. We still live in a world, I think, that is the therapy world is moving more towards bottom up meets top down, but it's still a fairly top down cognitive world, which is fine as long as it includes, the nervous system, because you're always working with the nervous system. We're in our nervous system all the time. And when we're working to shape something differently, whether that's a story or behavior or feeling, whatever, it's a nervous system driven experience. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you found your way there.
It came to a place where I remember asking a psychologist, actually. I said something like, I don't understand when I walk into my closet and it's kind of
Hmm.
cluttered. And I said, I get all activated and I'm not thinking anything. And
Yeah.
she didn't really have anything to say to that. And I was like, and then I learned the polyvagal theory. So yeah, I think that in the past, it was really, we were trying to figure out thinking differently about, let's say, the closet or whatever it is. And it just wasn't working.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I think we try to solve the problem before we understand where the problem's coming from, right? So we're trying to think differently about the closet before we think, oh, but what's going on in my nervous system, in my, being that brought this alive, right? So, and then as we begin to work with our nervous system, and the nervous system gives us information and it begins to shape differently, we'll think about the closet differently. It organically changes, right? So we're sort of going with the flow rather than swimming upstream, right? If you go with the flow, you start with the nervous system, and then the behaviors, the feelings, the thoughts, the stories all organically change as the nervous system changes.
Yes, 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 yes. And that's something that's totally new. Speak mainly, I have the podcast because I know what it was like for so many decades going through that type of trying to get help and not understanding and getting answers that didn't make sense. So now that I have some answers, I want to share to help. So I think one of the things I'll say is that, someone like me who grew up with attachment trauma, very scary environment, lots of chaos, I have a nervous system that has been shaped to very much be on guard, be protective. And so I think let's start there because when we talk about getting to know the nervous system, many people, there's different reactions from trauma, people who have experienced trauma. One is, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't want to go there. It feels too scary. You see my hands up. Um, and no, thank you. I'll just stay here, safer there. I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Why, what is it about the nervous system that we need to start there? And what you call we need to start befriending, making it a friend.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because that's not an uncommon response. We're used to staying in our head, which keeps us away from our nervous system. And really, if we're a trauma survivor, we often, left our body anyway. We live from the head up, right? So
Mhm.
re-inhabiting this vehicle that's taking me through life is scary, right? So we want to, in the beginning, go slow and dip into the nervous system. What I find in the beginning is the psychoed about the nervous system is a great place to start because it's not telling us we have to do anything. It's just educating us about here's a part of your body and here's how it works. And I often find that once we do that, people begin to say, oh, so that's why this, or that's why this. Oh, I go here a lot. Oh, I didn't know, that's what begins to happen. So it brings on the safe curiosity, which is what we're looking for. Whatever we do has to feel safe enough to our nervous system to allow us to do it. So I think psychoed's a great place to start,
Yeah.
which is kind of funny because we're talking about getting away from of experience. And yet, as we bring in the awareness of how this body works, we can then begin to go into the body safely and come back, come back up. So, it is both brain and body are part of the same system, right? So we always want to be, working with both at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think one of my, besides it happening for me, I just love it when I work with people. Just last week, I was sharing some, because I did your professional training when you first started it and you were teaching it. And so I've learned so much. I share it. And the reaction I get each time they learn about that, they're like, what?
Yeah.
It's just opens up a whole new freedom and possibility and hope and that's just it's just what we need.
Yeah. I mean, it takes the self criticism, the self blame, the shame out of what's happening or what we did or how we responded, right? When if I don't understand my nervous system experience, I think, well, I chose this, I did this. Then I go into that spiral of
Yeah.
all of that, you know, beating up on myself or the other, beating up on the people out there. The world is unfair. So one or the other. But when I understand, oh, this is my nervous system acting in service of my safety and survival. Granted, it might not feel so rational in the moment, but the nervous system is simply acting on its familiar experience to keep me safe. Then I can begin to do something different. I can have some curiosity, I think, comes first. We talk about compassion and self-compassion. And for me, curiosity is the easiest to reach for. Compassion's probably next. Self-compassion was way down the road somewhere. It's
Yeah.
hard to find that self-compassion,
Oh yeah.
which I don't have to. Curiosity is all you need. Can you be a bit curious about, oh, that's interesting, right? And that's what you say your clients find. That's what my clients would find. You could see curiosity go, that sort of, right? And they go, oh, there's curiosity. Now we're good. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah. I don't know why that story just popped in my head, but I'm going to share it anyway. I remember um I think I was just like at the tip of maybe reading a book before I took your training on this, and I was working with someone from a different point of view. It wasn't polyvagal. And she said to me, "Yeah, but I don't understand when I'm driving and I passed a field, I get activated." And I was like, "Oh boy, yes you do with poly." And I knew I had to dig deeper into polyvagal theory because we
Yeah.
need to understand that there's a reason why that's happening. It's not
Yeah.
random.
Right, right. Yeah. And I think when we understand what's behind, right, the question that I always ask, whether it's myself or inviting someone else to consider is in this moment, what is your nervous system wanting you to know? Right. Then that kind of leads us on a journey of discovery, right? Right.
Mhm.
So when you go past the field and you feel something, what is your nervous system wanting you to know in this moment? Right. Not what do you need to remember or what is your brain telling you, but what does your nervous system want you to know? And so it takes you to that place of sort of exploring, oh, it's trying to tell me that, it feels a little unsafe in this moment, right? Or you need to drive a little faster and get out of here, or something. And I
Mm.
love that that's the level of of information we get, rather than taking me back to a time when whatever, which is going to take me off in a cognitive, story. I can
Mhm,
stay in
mhm.
the nervous system, which then gives me different information. Yeah.
So that question of what is your nervous system trying to tell you now,
Yeah.
at this moment?
In this moment. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm.
Yeah. And what it's trying to tell you in this moment is based on your earlier experience, because the nervous system is shaped moment to moment. So every moment it's taking in information and making an assessment, safe, not safe, and it's then creating a pathway, right?
Yes.
So our nervous systems today, as we're doing this, are taking in, does this feel safe and okay? Mine says yes. I hope yours says yes. And then
Yes.
we move into connection and we explore further. If mine said no or yours said no, it would be a different experience, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So I'm trying to put this together with okay, so let's say a nervous system says no, it
hmm
doesn't feel safe right
hmm
now.
hmm
What
And our nervous systems often do, right? And then the question is, can I turn toward it again with curiosity and say, what are the cues of danger that are outweighing any cues of safety? Because, and I do a very simple safety danger equation. And you can just list in this moment, what are the cues of danger? What are the cues of safety? And we often miss the cues of safety because we're focused
Mhm,
on
mhm.
the cues of danger. If I can list them all, then I can see concretely what's going on. I need to reduce some of those cues of danger, and I need to have a better connection to the cues of safety. And then the equation will rebalance. But
Mhm.
there is no sense in banging your head against trying to do something when your nervous system says it does not feel safe enough in this moment. It's simply your brain might say, oh, come on, you can do this, or you need to, or have to. Your nervous system is going to get in the way.
Mhm.
So go to your nervous system and say, what's happening in this moment? And how can I work with to shift that balance? And sometimes again, it's an environmental something that might be going on,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Sometimes it's what's happening inside my own body, right? And sometimes it's the sense of connection or not with another person. That those are the pathways that neuroception, which is the phrase for how your nervous system takes in information, right? Steve Porges created that word, which I love that word. I think it's so descriptive, right? Nervous system uses these three pathways: the environment, the embodied inside pathway, and the connection between two nervous systems to always look for cues of safety and danger, right?
And one of the things that was also mind blowing for me and so helpful was learning that and how it determines that is that it looks at in a millisecond past experiences that have, even if it's a sliver of similarity, and that
Mhm.
the brain is really just going, this is like this is like that. And so all that's happening below awareness. We're not aware of that, but that's going on. And then
Right.
we're getting that response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we feel the response, we feel the behavior or the body sensation
Right.
or the thought or the word, whatever, but we have to travel back to where it first came in and bring our awareness to those cues. Right. And then it can begin to make sense. Right. Like I had an interaction with someone and afterwards I was left thinking that felt weird.
Mhm.
Right. And the person was perfectly, fine, friendly, human, but something felt off in my nervous system. And afterwards, I could go back and I could say, okay, let me reflect on that and find, what was the cue of danger that sort of came in, and it was based on, an experience, from decades ago.
Mhm.
Right. But it had
Mhm.
enough of a familiar feeling that the nervous system made that connection and just made it feel slightly off. Mm.
Yes. Yeah. I share this. I've shared this before on the podcast because it was so significant to me. I think it was last year we were driving to the airport and we were Myrtle Beach, we were driving by and I heard my brain and my brain went, oh, looking out the window, oh, this town is like that town. And I went, that's it. That's
Mm,
what my brain is doing all the time. This is
yeah.
like, oh, that is like this is like that. That's a little similar to that. And so this is what's happening in our bodies all the time. And even just knowing that brings a sense of, okay, okay, my brain
Mhm,
is doing this. Yeah.
mhm,
Mm,
mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. And our brains and our nervous systems are always doing that compare contrast experience, right? And so, if we know that, it helps us, make some sense of what's happening. And also, if we have an experience that we go, oh, I like this, the nervous system experience might be to say, oh, let's change it just a little bit and see what happens, because it needs a comparison. Does this feel, better? Do I like it more or do I like it less? Right. So we're always sort of playing with, here's the first response. And then, well, let's play and see, what if I, move a little this way or move a little this way? How does it shift? So
Mm,
that's the fun part, right?
the fun
Right.
part.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask some questions now that maybe not be so fun, but they're important. And that is this: because many people who have had complex trauma and their bodies have learned to be in a place of self protection, which, their bodies are ready because they don't, their body remembers that it wasn't kind of safe to be present or just, in the here and now. And so there's this, there's this maybe even constriction in the body. And how does one start to work on um, feeling safer so that the body can learn to just relax a little bit more?
And I think first thing we do is we want to appreciate the wisdom of the nervous system, right? It's doing this for good reason, right? So we don't want our brain to try and talk us out of it or override it or
Mhm,
tell us to ignore it, because that's usually the experience we had growing up.
mhm,
Don't believe what you see, don't feel what you feel, all of those things. So instead, we're going to turn toward and go, oh, wise nervous system, it's doing this
mm,
for a reason, right? I appreciate, and I often start with inviting people to appreciate their survival responses. So, if you're sympathetic and you do have a lot of anxiety or a lot of that anger, so it's either the flight response or the fight response, think about all the ways those responses have protected you, to appreciate
mm,
it, right? The same is true for the dorsal disconnect collapse, right? That's my go-to survival state is that dorsal disappear. And I can really spend some time appreciating how it kept me safe growing up and still keeps me safe sometimes, right? So first is the appreciation of how survival responses have kept you alive, kept you going, right?
mhm,
Start
mhm,
there. And then, we can say, in this moment, perhaps I don't need the same intensity of response that I had back then. So it's a tiny, tiny shift. I never want to get rid of my dorsal survival response. I love it and I need it. My sympathetic as well. The same for you. You need those. We never want to get rid of them. We just would like to have a bit more ventral regulation so they don't have to be quite so intense. Right. And so, we shape tiny moments differently so that we begin to feel just a little less intensely dysregulated, right? Not not dysregulated, but just a little less dysregulated. And I think that's the one of the hallmarks of this way of working is you shape things slowly
yeah.
in small ways. We don't try for something really huge because, the system has done this for a long time for a reason. So we're just sort of shaping slowly. And I think, we talked about ventral. Ventral is that place of safety connection, which for many trauma survivors is an unfamiliar world, right? A place that every nervous system does visit in tiny moments every day, right? And I love to help people really take that in, that you may think you're living in sympathetic or dorsal, and there are these tiny micro moments when you move out of that and you move into ventral, right? And the more we recognize that, the safer it becomes, because sympathetic and dorsal survival recognize, oh, there is a place of regulation and safety. And if I go to that place, the world doesn't come to an end.
Mhm.
Because usually when we create those survival strategies, we're young, right? And we didn't have access to all this ventral regulation. It was not there the way it can be as adults. And so, there's not a trust in that,
Mhm.
right? So as we build more capacity to come to ventral, the system begins to trust.
Mhm.
Oh, that is a place that's open, right? And I don't get hurt. And the world doesn't end and bad things don't happen, right? It's safe to be in this place in the beginning for a few moments in time. That's great. Again, it's a gentle shaping to get there.
Mhm. All those words I've talked to myself and said, like, the words that we use, like gentleness, softly, slowly, those are healing balms to a nervous system that grew up with complete dysregulation, and
Mhm.
they're welcomed, like they're so welcomed for us. Um,
Yeah.
and one of the things I learned as started practicing those little moments, because, well, I'll just say, years ago, a therapist once asked me to remember a time that I was safe, and I was like, I couldn't, and she was surprised I couldn't. So then she just said, well, imagine one. But it really was hard for me to come up with one. Whereas now I have lots of felt experiences, but it started very slow. And when the
Yes.
nervous system puts that toe in and sees
Mhm.
how nice it feels in the body, it's like it would like a little more.
Yes. And as soon as you have that micro moment of feeling safe and okay, that then lives in your nervous system forever. Right. And you can bring it back to life and you keep adding to it. So in the beginning, when you were asked to remember a time, your nervous system couldn't come up with that lived experience. Right. I imagine, if we went back now, you'd find some, but they weren't accessible to you in that moment.
Mm,
Right. And it's interesting with my work, a lot of my work with clients, we would use like this moment in time right here in my office between the two of us.
mm,
And feel like a moment of safety. Hopefully. I mean, that's the therapeutic relationship. So hopefully, but to bring something alive that the nervous system can actually feel, and then it gets wired in. So yeah, I love that you began to find those moments and now
mm.
they're easy to find, right? And I think that's also the case when the nervous system reaches for something and is successful in finding it. It appreciates that and says, oh, let's do that again, right? Because it feels good. The nervous system goes, oh, I like that. Let's do it again. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of your key, you could talk about it if you'd like, um, practices that is just it's really really helpful in creating a practice and a pattern was the looking for the glimmers.
Yes. Yes. I do love glimmers and yes, they're every time I teach glimmers, and I've just finished a glimmers journal that will be out next year because I think it's lovely to be able to track your glimmers,
Yeah.
right? And find the categories and find the places. So, yes, glimmers are those tiny micro moments, and truly they are all around us. But
Hmm.
when we are stuck in a survival state, they're so hard to find
Hmm.
because our system won't allow us to even look for them.
Oh.
So, the first thing is to notice, how do you recognize that you've come across a glimmer? Right? That's the first thing to do. And it's because everybody does it differently. Right? Some people feel, something in their body, something happens in their body. I don't tend to go to my body first still. I go to my brain first, and my brain gives me a message. Oh, look at that. Right. So mine comes brain in first and then lands. Yours, I don't know. How do you notice you've bumped into a glimmer?
I think it would probably be the same thing. Look,
Yeah.
look.
Yeah. 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 So that's lovely. There's no one way to find a glimmer, right? That's the beauty of the nervous system. So you see it and then you stop for just a moment. A few seconds is all you need, and let it feel you appreciate it. Right?
Yeah.
That's the very simple practice. See, stop, appreciate. And again, once the nervous system has that experience, it'll begin to
Yes.
automatically look for more.
Yes.
You don't have to really push to do that, which is what I love as well. And then, share with somebody else, right? Because again, we love to relive and reminisce and share with somebody. And if I share a glimmer with you, you feel it
Yes.
and feel it, and it just builds again. So we see, stop, appreciate, then we share, find a glimmer buddy, make a glimmer group. This happening all around the world. People email me all the time. Oh, I just made a glimmer group at my work. It's
Like
so
it.
sweet. I
I
love
love
it.
it. I love
Yeah.
it. I love it.
Yeah.
And
So, oh,
just as we're talking about this, like looking for the glimmers and there we go. We're reshaping our nervous system
yes.
for
Yeah.
good, for feeling good, for being inside our body when, it's been a real challenge. So
Yeah.
it's really, I think it's one of the real important practices that can
Yeah.
be really life changing, I
Mm,
think. And they're
mm.
small things. They're not like huge. Uh,
Right. And we want to remember, and I do want to say that glimmers do not change your triggers in any way. They don't do anything with the things that you're suffering with the unresolved trauma or the things that activate you. That's not their job, right? They also are not a way to avoid that. They're not a way to say, count your blessings and ignore your suffering. They're not in that in any way. What they are is a way to shape your system towards more capacity for regulation so that you then can safely process the trauma and the unresolved experiences that you have, which you can't do unless you have the ability to anchor in ventral, and glimmers are a way to help you bring that ventral regulation so you can work with
yeah,
the
I need
trauma.
you. I need you to say that again because it is so important.
Yeah, it is because, people would say it's, sort of, is that toxic positivity? That's the language that's been going around. And no, it's not. It's a recognition that the nervous system can exquisitely both hold the suffering and notice moments of okayness. It does both beautifully. And when we have the moments of okayness, a glimmer comes in that lands in your system somewhere, right? And then another one comes in and it lands as well. And they begin to accumulate. And what they do is they offer you the capacity to reach for ventral and be in a state of safe enough so that you can then turn toward your unresolved trauma, the places you're suffering, and work with them without being hijacked and reliving them.
Yeah. I think this is a really nice place to stop. And I know we'll be meeting again. And I have some more questions for you regarding just that. So thank you for being with us today. And I look forward to our next episode together.
Beautiful. Thank you.